I'm going to bring this committee meeting to order at 5:37 and roll call. Can we start with you, Terry?
Up dinner, honey.
I'm gonna get it next door.
Huh?
Hi.
Okay.
This is Terry Lee, President.
Here.
Terry, will you take a
Yeah.
moment to mute from your home computer?
Mute, yeah.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, Carter War here.
Thank you.
No, Cherriello.
I want this.
Betsy Morgan Baylor here, and Terry Lee
He went first.
is busy but
He went first.
accounted for. Oh, you went first. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Excuse me. I'm distracted. So from roll call, I would like to ask for oral communications. Are there any oral communications from those of you online or in the schoolhouse? All right, hearing none, I'd like to take a moment just to welcome our two guests in the schoolhouse, Nancy Powell, hello, welcome back, and Jackie Magno. Special hello, because Jackie has, as the committee knows, Jackie has submitted her application to join the Open Space Committee, and we think that is an utterly fabulous idea. So I wanted to take just this moment to introduce a few things about her that you may already know, and if so, you get to hear them again. But for those of you that don't know, she is, as are three of us, affiliated with Jasper Ridge Biological Preserve, a docent, as Gary and I are, Nona having been prior staff scientist. So her strong affiliation there makes her automatically a natural fit for this for this committee because of the training that is offered there. Not that she needed it though, because your undergraduate degree being in science, a chemistry major as an undergraduate, which naturally led to an MBA and then work in the tech world. But she came back to the sciences not so long ago as a member of the Distinguished Careers Institute at Stanford and studied for a year side by side with Liz Hadley, faculty director at the time of Jasper Ridge in her laboratory. And I know that you'd rather hear from her rather than me. So would you like to take a moment? You can grab one of these mics and just say a couple of words about, yeah, just so the community can meet you.
There you go. Say you're here.
Okay, Betsy, I'm here. It's Bev Lippman.
Bev, welcome. So glad to
Thank
hear from you.
Okay.
Okay, Jackie's going to turn on the mic and I'll turn mine off so that the hopefully the camera.
Okay. So thank you for giving me a minute. That's, I really appreciate it. Can you hear me? Okay. Is that better? Okay. So I think Betsy, you and I met as we're both members of the coordinating committee at Jasper Ridge. And it's just been a fantastic opportunity to get re-entrenched into the sciences through the DCI fellowship at Stanford. But prior to that, I also had a long career in tech. So I was an executive at several companies, including GE Medical, SAP, IBM, just a few well-known companies. And once I was in corporate doing mergers and acquisitions, at some point I left and I became an angel investor where I've been working with an organization. It's an investment firm called Golden Seeds. We focus on investing across all startups in all sectors, except they have to be led by women. So those are the two passions in my life. One is biodiversity conservation, and the other is supporting women in the workplace. So it is in my passion for biodiversity conservation and land stewardship that I'm applying to this committee. I would love to serve as a now 14-year resident of Portola Valley. I'd love to serve my community and help preserve the character of Portola Valley. So I'm here to serve in any capacity that I can, but I'd love to participate with this group.
Thanks for taking that moment, Jackie. I really appreciate hearing and the community. You are a designer, a by design, perfect candidate for this committee. So pending council approval in 2 weeks, we'll see you at our next meeting, we hope. All goes well. So thank you, and I think that brings us
I think
then
I'll get
to
leftovers. I'll have
2
to-
minutes.
leftovers.
Hey, Gary,
Yeah.
Gary,
Oh, yes.
so sorry. It's wonderful to have you here. If you could mute, that might be helpful until we have, unless you have something to say about the minutes, because I am about to call for approval of the minutes if there be no corrections or statements. So anyone having any amendments to known as positively excellent minutes? The detail is a gift for those that don't want to go back and watch the entirety of the video. Okay, I don't hear any amendments, so may I ask for a motion to approve? Thank you, Terry. Any second? Carter, did you want a second? Oh, you have to abstain. I'll second them. And so moved. And may we hear for all ayes? Any objection?
I abstain.
Sorry, excuse me. Thank you, Carter. So with one abstention, due to absence, we have an approval of the January 16th minutes. Thank you. So that brings us to the heart of tonight's meeting, which has been in the works since our January meeting. Really a high-powered, high-octane, enthusiastic response to being presented with a 14-acre possibility on top of Skyline, the Fogarty parcel that abuts Windy Hill open space. I wanted to ask first for committee discussion around any new learnings, any observations, any contributions that you might have since the last meeting. And Nona, would you like to lead part of this meeting because you have maps to share? And really as a member of the ad hoc housing sites committee, are deeply steeped in the subject.
Well, and actually Carter's on ad hoc as well, so
That he is.
so I think the goal of this meeting with respect to Fogarty is to get a sense of the committee and potentially a vote from the committee on whether or not we want to recommend to the town council something. And the question is what that something should be. We have some additional information. For example, the ad hoc committee has recommended it as one of its sites for the town council to consider as an alternative site to Dorothy Ford Park for very low income housing. But the concern of this committee is broader than that, and in fact might be different from that, depending on how the town council considers the housing options at Fogarty. So I think the question before us is thinking about Fogarty as open space, but potentially beyond that. So I think the agenda packet has 2 things in it. Maybe I'll start by sharing that, unless Carter, do you want to jump in with anything from the ad hoc committee?
No, I think that, you know, what I believe, you know, our charge tonight is, you know, to, you know, consider the acquisition of that as open space. You know, with a broader picture, you know, as seeing it, you know, seeing some of that, you know, being exchanged, you know, to permanently preserve, you know, Dorothy Ford Park, you know, as open space. You know, rather than as a housing site. My support for this is lots of discussion, so I'll save that for later.
Yeah, I think, just in terms of questions that have come up in the interim from last month, I took a trip up to the top of Skyline last Friday and walked not deeply down, but down the trail that joins it. So the first part of Lost Trail from Skyline down, and was very interested to see the adjoining mid-pen, so adjoining, not meaning Fogarty, but south to the south towards Fogarty. The clearing looked masticated, acreage there. And I wondered if Terry, because you visit that area fairly frequently, Nancy, I know gets up there too. If you had noticed when that mastication occurred. I was going to look on, at Nona's suggestion, I was going to look at historic Google Earth maps, but just didn't get a chance. But it looked like it was a substantial amount of mastication over some number of acreage. And I was curious about the plant community that it represented prior to its being removed. So that can remain as a hanging question. A hanging question, and it, you know, underlying that question was curiosity about appropriate land management as we look at this parcel moving forward. So this would be looking at one of our two maps that came out with tonight's agenda, the second map. This would be the area between the Fogarty parcel and just below Lost Trail as it intersects with Skyline there. Please.
Okay, so this will take a minute, but I'm going to share my screen. I don't know why it's so slow. It's coming, I think. Okay, there we go. Okay, I don't know why it's not. Okay, there we go. So these are the two maps that are in the agenda packet, and they illustrate one of the factors that we discussed at our last meeting. The panel on the left shows the gap in the Bay Area Ridge Trail that could be potentially partially filled by a trail through Fogarty Winery parcels. The one on the lower left, 0800100020, is the one that is being considered. And then the image on the right is just an aerial that shows it a little bit more closely. One of the things that Betsy and I talked about is that the subcommittee from the Ad Hoc Site Evaluation Committee that was looking into this as a housing site did do a tour of that parcel with Pat Fogarty. And so I'll share a couple more things from that. Okay, so what the next image that you'll see is another pair of images. And the one on the left is a terrain image that shows the parcel and shows a dashed green line, which is the route that we followed in the tour. We started at basically the bottom left-hand corner and made an arc around back to Skyline, and then went to basically the very north edge of the parcel and then wandered back. One of the things that you can see in this image is that there is actually sort of an old road, an old dirt road there, and you can see it in the terrain if you look closely. We more or less followed that or worked inside it, and it kind of inscribes the area that is more level. So Pat Fogarty is the one who does the maintenance on it, and he's able to go in there. So we were able to walk that pretty much. I mean, there's poison oak, brush has grown up since the last time he cleared it. You can see in the right-hand image what it looks like from the air, and you can see that it's partially cleared. But trees grow fast there, and there are a lot of them. So it's a gorgeous parcel. It has the old road loop, if you will, has a nice grade. It's very easy to walk. On the two sides of the parcel, to the very east and to the very west, are very steep canyons. And for example, when we were looking at the housing analysis and the site filters that are applied to all sites, the two sides of the parcel do not satisfy all of those filters. They are too steep, and the one on the east is too unstable. So in the middle, and again, this is sort of a separate issue from what we want to think about with open space, but the center part where we walked is the part that would be suitable for housing potentially, and technically is about 5 acres that pass through those site filters. But realistically, since the 5 acres isn't a sort of smooth polygon, I would say it's more like 3 or 4. Okay. The next thing I wanted to share is Betsy specifically said, what's the vegetation? So this next image that's going to come up is from the County of San Mateo fine scale vegetation map. And the area outlined in white is the parcel of interest. It has 3 colors, and those 3 colors are the top 3 in the key at the right. So it's primarily, I guess I would say primarily, Coast Live Oak Alliance. And then there is, the next is the sort of gray-green is Bay Laurel or Umbellularia. That is in the areas that are really steep and prone to sliding. And then the light green is Doug fir together with tan oak and also huckleberry. We actually did see a beautiful patch of huckleberry there. I was really surprised. Anyway, so that gives you a feel for what the vegetation is at the site.
Before we leave this, I have a question about it. If you're standing at the top close to Skyline Boulevard and not going in, you can see in the distance Doug firs. Can you approximate how deeply in that 3 to 4 acre portion that those Doug firs, are they on the in that first green loop, if you will, or are they in a lower, more distant plateau?
I think this map is pretty good. So the light green is Doug fir, tan oak, and huckleberry. The very light,
The bright green.
light green. Yeah. So there's a fair amount, and you drop off the road, and then the arc that we walked goes through the Doug fir. And we walked back, and then we went to the north edge of the parcel, and that's where you pick up more Coast Live Oaks and then a bunch of bays and madrones. Let me advance a couple more, and I'll show you some pictures. So this is what it looks like with all the Doug fir. Well, you can't see it yet. Hold on. There we go. So the three people who went on this tour, Pat Fogarty led it, and Ronnie Krasinski, Mary Hefty, and I joined him. And so you can see some of it's pretty level. This is from kind of that arc that we made closer to the road. A lot of Doug fir. Here we are. The path that we're walking there is the old road, and it's a pretty level grade for most of it. He drives a pickup on it. And then one more image. So this is just, there aren't very many views because there are a lot of trees, and even though the trees are not very old, they're really big now. So, but obviously you can see to the valley, and this is basically looking straight north. Quite cool. Okay, I don't know if that helps. I don't know how many people feel like they know that terrain and know the landscape there, but this was just intended to give you a feel for it if you haven't.
Yeah. It gives me, standing on the road, I had a breathtaking experience, but not the view. So thank you for the walkthrough, absent coming home with a raging case of poison oak. Okay, I'll stop sharing. I have other slides if we need them, but we don't know that we do, so. Council Member Judith Haskell, welcome. Mayor Judith Haskell, welcome. And committee members, any questions for Nona about the maps or any comments? Terry, I know you know this area as well as anyone here. Any comments about the terrain, the vegetation? Before we have discussion. All right, then may I open it up? And Carter, I think you were good. Yeah. May I open it up to committee discussion then?
Sure, I'll start. I think it's a good property, for the kinds of things that to effectively answer open space opportunities, and to, potentially provide, housing opportunities within that, or next to that open space, utilizing, a mechanism that for me effectively makes a land exchange possible to permanently preserve the Dorothy Ford Park parcel from housing development. I do think that acquiring this open space, or at least the portions that would be undevelopable, would continue to be, I would have the town continue to be, to see that as an opportunity. Because I think the value of its adjacency to Mid-Peninsula Regional Open Space District and the Audubon Society across the road, I think it is important. I did have a question that I'm not sure anybody can answer, is that it would seem to me that the Audubon Society, should be or would be amenable, and supportive, of, the Ridge Trail, crossing, from the Lost Trail, because the Audubon Society owns all of that land for a long ways, and it butts up to Skyline Boulevard. It also butts up, to kind of the south end, south, where the south end of the Ridge Trail currently ends, to help fill that gap.
Carter, point of clarification, you're talking about across the road?
Yeah,
Yeah,
cross Skyline
Yeah,
Boulevard.
I see. I didn't realize that was Audubon.
Yeah, it goes, there's it's in several parcels. One of the parcels is a 16 and a half acre, parcel, that's long and thin, that, would very effectively, connect, to connect from, the open space district land where the Lost Trail, meets, or, is close to Skyline Boulevard. So while I think the Fogarty property, helps with that opportunity, because I do think that, having activity through there would actually, improve the development opportunities, for housing, on, on the 13 and a half acres that we're considering right now. I think part of this process, should be, to coordinate with, MROSD and the Audubon Society, to make that connection successful and absolutely viable. Because I do think that there's, a rational nexus between them.
What I've been told is that Audubon is categorically not interested in having the connector trail. And that they, so that's part of the reason why Fogarty seems really appealing to some people is that Audubon has refused. But maybe,
We should probably let the world of donors know. Because I'm not sure I would be donating to Audubon Society anymore in that case.
Well, I think the world's listening in right now, so thank you for raising that. That does put more pressure on the negotiating team to see whether there could be some agreement with Fogarty about bringing the trail that much further. That not being the subject of today's meeting, it is something to consider, but very valuable point. Thank you. Thank you for raising it, Carter.
Now what? Now what did I do?
Are we looking at the pencil?
Appear to be. What did you do?
I don't know. Gary just said he'd approve of it, the parcel and housing, and I was just, the whole issue tonight is just approving as open space. And now it said something about screen sharing.
Hi,
No.
Bev.
Hi.
It's
hear
wonderful.
me?
Yes, and we can hear you loud and clear. And let me take this opportunity, save your thought, Carter. Let me take this opportunity to say that Bev, I'm so sorry that I didn't mention in the front of the conversation. The reason why we're 4 tonight, not rather than 6, is both Bev and Gary are home getting well. Bev is awaiting a hip replacement and Gary awaiting this cold to clear out. He didn't want to share it with the committee members, for which we thank him. But please weigh in, Bev. I think you have some thoughts about Fogarty and what you're sharing. At least that was my hunch as I heard you
Sure.
speak.
I totally approve of going ahead or pursuing the possibility of the Fogarty piece uh, as open space, as an open space piece. So that's what I
Okay, that's
approve that. Yeah, go ahead.
great. Great to hear. And if that sums it up, please continue if you have more to say, or if that's your piece right now, then if you mute,
That's right.
all the better. Good. But chime in anytime. Thanks, Bev. Carter, can you return to your comments about the trail connectivity and your proposed route through not just the parcel we would be acquiring, but the neighboring parcel?
Well, I mean, I'm looking at Land ID, which is a website that shows ownership of lands. It also shows the underlying topography, and if essentially in order to make the trail connectivity work, we would need more access than just on the 13.57 acre parcel. So one of the issues that I would want to make sure, and there's actually two additional Fogarty parcels, both of which are utilized principally as vineyard lands. We would need access all the way to Rapley Ranch Road. At the edge of Rapley Ranch Road, there could be a road cross, a Skyline Boulevard crossing of the trail that would avoid the Audubon properties. So I think that we need to be cognizant, of what the interconnectivity, of the acquisition, of the 13.57 acres, would mean, to the Ridge Trail. And I think that we would need to use this nexus as an opportunity to gain town trail rights, or trail easement, along Skyline Boulevard, for that additional frontage to get to Rapley Ranch Road in order to do that. So Nona's drawing actually indicates that my yellow line would need to come, all the way a little further down Rapley Ranch, so that it got to Rapley,
So it doesn't
Ranch
cut off
Road.
the corner of the
so it
Audubon.
doesn't cut off the corner.
Mhm.
There you go.
I'm going to, as way of thanking you for coming up with a key heart of the conversation point, nominate you to be a member of the negotiating team.
I second that.
I probably have conflicts of interest because the Fogartys have been and continue to be clients of mine. So I'm happy to communicate as, Carter the person, but not as a negotiating team member.
Point taken. Thank you.
Is that with the winery or with the family?
All right. Before turning to Terry, I wanted to ask Gary Nielsen if you have anything to contribute to the conversation. This would be a great time to chime in.
Yes, last month we had a very good discussion, I thought, about the possibility of this open space and maybe becoming something else. That is the housing. And I was very much in enthused by it, and I still have a very strong feelings that yes, we should do this. It's an available parcel. We have money. I say take it. Thank you.
That's very succinct. I appreciate it. Thank you, Gary and Terry.
Thanks. I remarked on this last month already, and I really appreciate the additional work that my colleagues have done, which I think generally supports and highlights the initial observations we collectively, I think, made last month. And as an advisory committee, my understanding is we're recommending, not necessarily negotiating or executing anything on behalf of the town, but I remain very excited about the merits of this opportunity, both on its own for open space and also as potential housing to support additional town priorities. And I also am very excited about the possibility, which I recall being mentioned, that the property owners might be open to additional sales or donations or permissions to expand public access to adjacent open space, including, the Ridge Trail, but maybe not exclusively just that. So I would also observe again that we have long remarked on this committee that land in Portola Valley is very expensive. And there's something about this location and this property owner that seems present a good opportunity at value, in part because it is not in central Portola Valley, but still has great utility as open space. And as I advocated for before, actually quite a bit of accessibility. So being flexible in our thinking, I'm still very excited about this from those multiple perspectives that my committee members have mentioned that resonate with me as well, and would happily encourage a recommendation to council or whoever the right parties are, to continue to pursue this seriously.
Beautiful. As I hear you, the enthusiasm that I share for this parcel, the great enthusiasm I share for this parcel, looking at it as open space committee members, so separate from the potential housing that may or may not be there. And that is in another decision-making field. So looking at it strictly from the open space point of view, my enthusiasm is strongly linked to the trail connectivity issue. And so finding a means to not support, but to actually make that connection would be the heart of the negotiation. And yes, I like your use of the word value. It promises a lot to the community and at a, hopefully at a reasonable place that we can come together and afford. And Mona, you presented so beautifully. Have you got some wrap up comments?
I feel like I'm in the awkward position of being on two committees that are looking at it in very different ways. And I have some difficulty sort of separating my two personas. So I want to be clear that it probably is. And I see great, huge potential as open space, and I see high potential as housing. And so I just want to be clear on that. I also have a couple more images I just want to share, partly maybe to further explain where I'm coming from on this. Let's see if I can. This will take a second, but it's coming. I don't know why it says that. I did a few more, I looked a little bit more at the constraints for housing. And I don't know if we need to sort of say, well, what are the trail options if there were housing? What would be the trail connections if there weren't? And for some reason, this is not advancing really quickly. So sorry. Let me stop sharing and see if I can bring this up a different way. Okay, you've seen a whole bunch of pictures now. So let's see if I can. Actually, why don't you go ahead, Betsy? This is not responding very well.
Well, I'm taking a moment here. I wanted to know if anyone in the audience had, Judith, anything to add, Nancy, Jackie, any questions, any comments? We're good? Good enough. Good enough. I'm going to repeat what you said so that those at home can hear. Judith saying that it's probably not the time in the committee's purview to be as granular as we are being. It's okay, but unnecessary really is what you're saying, I think. And that we can pass the general spirit of our recommendation over to the panel. I think what you caught last time from this committee was a case of raging enthusiasm and I think you see that we still have it and we have these questions that we wanted to make public. So with that, Nona, have you anything remaining to share? Okay. And Nancy and Jackie, if you have any questions, please weigh in. And those of you at home, same thing. Yeah, it's a longer lag today than it typically.
The image that I wanted to show is, we've been thinking about what are some of the risks of this parcel too. And you're probably all familiar with the newly released fire hazard severity index maps. So I thought I would just share so you know where we are on this particular parcel.
For some
Um,
reason, it's not loading. Will you describe? Yeah, describe
Yeah.
what you're seeing.
Well, yeah, so it's in the high risk category, which is true of the whole western slope and is true of a fair amount of Portola Valley. So Portola Valley does not have any very high hazard severity zone parcels as far as I've seen on the map. And what's interesting, I think, looking at the map is that, you know, all of that slope is in high, not very high, whereas Los Trancos Woods is in very high, and so is Foothill Park. So there are areas that, you know, it's not like they downgraded everything in this particular iteration. Okay,
That's
I've
helpful to know.
described it, so I don't need to share, even though my computer is trying.
Reassuring. So with that, are we ready to entertain a motion? And if so, um,
That it makes sense, to, for the town council to, consider acquiring the property, for, a mixed use purpose.
with strong committee, with strong committee support and interest.
That's like saying I'm very happy. So, so I'd make a motion that, that we recommend to the town council to take the next steps, in the possible acquisition, of, parcel, 080010020, in the ownership, of Fogarty Winery, for the purposes, of, open space and the potential, of, exchange, of development opportunities, onto this property, to preserve the, Dorothy Ford Park parcel, 7 acres, as permanent open space. In an effort, to obviate, the development opportunity that is currently within the housing element.
As known as taking real-time notes. I'm going to ask her to read that back for committee discussion, and Carter can jump in and, yeah,
We
Hello.
have it recorded, so, the basics of it, is that, it makes sense, it makes, from a discussion standpoint, the reason I'm making that motion, is because it makes sense because of its adjacency, and connectivity, of, a ridge trail extension. If the property were, available on the market, it would probably be a post acquisition, instead of a town acquisition, with dedication, to Mid-Peninsula Regional Open Space District. And if that were the case, then, it would take away, the likely opportunity for housing, to obviate our development needs. So that's why it makes, sense, for the town to acquire it, because it's within the town's, boundaries. It's within the town's jurisdiction. And it, has the opportunity for doing as much or more, than the 1.4 acres that is currently identified in the housing element, for Dorothy Ford Park.
thank you for the explication. And committee discussion about the motion additions? Barry, I see you pulling the microphone close.
No, if Carter's making a motion, I would actually second. I don't have. It's a restatement of his comments from before, which
Yeah.
I actually agree with,
Mhm.
and it reflects what I was trying to communicate earlier. So
Nice.
I'm excited about our encouragement of the council or appropriate parties to investigate this further, knowing that this committee and I think the community probably has support for it.
Beautiful. We will capture the precise wording on the recording later. Nona, anything to add there?
No, I'm all on board.
As am I. So,
I think we've got Gary and Bev.
Yeah, just one comment. At first, my first thought was that do we need to bring Dorothy Ford Park into it? And I have changed my mind. Yes, we do. Because we are not going to build on Dorothy Ford Park, and we need every parcel we can get our hands on to save it. So that's good. I think we should leave that comment in.
thank you for the banner comment, Gary. And Bev, your hand is not yet raised, so I'm not calling on you, just acknowledging that you're there from home, and thank you for being with us in spirit. You are earlier said that you were fully enthusiastic about this acquisition. So let's do this by a roll call vote. Nona,
Yes.
Terry,
Yes, I'm in support.
Carter,
Yes.
and I too am a big fat yes. So Gary, I would love to call on Gary and Bev technically because we didn't do the full proper noticing. We didn't have time to notice. So that's why I captured their in spirit support, but because they're home and not present, the Brown Act suggests that we cannot include them in this vote. It is spiritually unanimous, all the 6 of us, as you can hear, but due to illness, not possible. We can hold a second vote next time when we're all together. There you are. Thank you, committee members. Any wrap-up comments before I need to take a step back, because I did take things slightly out of order today, skipping over the committee elections for 2025. We spoke about this last month, and just as a slight preamble, my intention for next year is to start to coordinate with the town council and other committees in their nominations and elections at the first committee meeting of the year. So we would have a changing of the guard at the January meeting, assuming that's our first meeting or whenever our first meeting occurs. So this is for the remaining 10 months of the 2025 year. Would happily accept nominations for chair.
I nominate Betsy Morgenthaler as chair and Nona Churiello as vice chair.
Thank you, Carter. Is there any discussion?
I'll
I'm willing
second
to
those 2 nominations.
Thank you, Gary.
I move the nominations be closed.
Tough bargain. All right, then may I call for a vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. And I am going to suggest we postpone the nomination of a secretary. Nona's serving as that role, in that role, and has been serving a double capacity. But as in my conversations with Jackie, she's willing and standing by. And so we will take that up at our next meeting, if all goes well at the town council meeting in 2 weeks. So thank you for volunteering to step into such a large role at the get-go. And then that brings us to committee, to old business item, town council report. We sent out a link to the video as well as the verbatim comments and Nona's slides on Dorothy Ford Park. I'm happy to receive any questions that anyone might have about the last year, 2024's work, but otherwise we'll step into a conversation about committee priorities for 2025. Any questions about 2024? Seeing no questions, no hands raised at home or here amongst those present in the schoolhouse, then let's talk briefly as bullet points about comments for our 2025 year. Happily hear from Carter, Terry, Nona. I have a few myself.
I didn't get a chance to click on the link. So there isn't anything in this packet, you know.
Pardon me, in the package, which you have in front of you, the verbatim comments appear on page 8 of 18 and continue through, well, with lots of great picture slides from Nona, continue through to page 18. I am happy to highlight
Okay.
some of the work for 2025. Terry or Nona would like to jump in here. Okay, well then let me just highlight that number one on the list is the energy of this committee. The formation of this committee was around acquisition, and it certainly has been fabulous working to recommend the Fogarty parcel for town council consideration and acquisition. I think that seek and ye shall find is very important. And as we as a community have been made aware that we're sitting on money that over the course of time, it has grown spectacularly thanks to higher interest rates, but so has housing and parcel costs in Portola Valley, or so have parcel costs in Portola Valley. And so that's not a race that we can consider winning. We'd be better off putting this to work. When we're thinking about acquisition in this year and the years ahead, as well as parcels, I want to go back to talking about easements and keeping our eyes open for easements. Nona created a terrific map around the time that we were looking closely at Frog Pond, and it was a wildlife connectivity map that showed the connection between Hawthorns and the Frog Pond area and the importance of that wildlife corridor. I should, if I'd had time, and maybe we can do this at a future meeting, but it just draws your attention to the other ways we might put our nest egg to work. So I would highlight that as a first objective for 2025, which is to keep on keeping on. And secondly, and I spent some time at the council going over the opportunities for open space fund stewardship. And we highlighted what appears on your final page of this package is a copy of a ballot measure R, where the town attorney was weighing in about if then comment, which if this bill passes, then the town will set up a separate account for the open space monies collected. That remains to be done. And there's a legal reason why we want to pursue the completion of that promise. But there are practical reasons why we want to do so as well. And those two appear in the minutes of, or on the agenda item, and you can read those compelling reasons at your leisure. That remains to be done this year. Or at least we will put it to the town council that the reasons why and some of the steps that confront us. Apart from those two items, we are doing some work. We have some committee work to do on updating the charter. We did the charter as recently as 2023. The town council voted on it in January of 2023, but the committee approved a slightly different version than the town council approved a month later. So we will be coming back to the town council to update the charter so it's consistent with the one that we voted on. As well, we have the legal grant deed documents that we've been collecting, and I want to single out Nancy Powell for her great help in seeing that some of those were complete. So that we will continue. And then lastly, and this will lead into the next agenda item, there's Hawthorns. And Hawthorns is,
Second,
Please.
I don't know if they're, on on the bolded topic of open space parcels. There are quite a few conservation easements, that the town is charged with, protection. And I know of at least a couple of those parcels where I'm not sure the town even remembers, that they have those, conservation easements. And, a couple of those parcels I know aren't being well taken care of, from a landscape maintenance, an invasive, plants, point of view.
are
and-
you talking about conservation easements in general and referring,
Well,
for
I-
instance, to the lanes?
No, I'm not. I'm actually talking, there's a couple weird little, conservation easements that,
On
that-
our properties.
no, they're other people's properties, that the town has a conservation easement on. And I don't, to me, part of the part of why conservation easements were, either granted, gifted, or mandated, was, for protection. And, to me, the Open Space Committee would appear to be the committee, or at least in concert with the Conservation Committee, the keeper, of that information. And I don't believe there's a map, I don't believe there's even a list, of them. And it would make sense, because some of those conservation easements may be passé at this point, because of other kinds of things that have happened over time. Not the least of which, is that the state's housing mandates. And some of them that I've run into, in my career as an architect, and land planner in Portola Valley, don't quite make very much sense anymore. And it would make sense to at least have a map and a list of those elements, of those easements, in as well as the open space parcels, so that we can, one, evaluate whether they continue to make sense, two, what are the other kinds of, things that, should be considered, like trails and, wildlife corridors and, connectivity. And then making sure that there's a recommendation, of what the maintenance, because it's really hard to preserve, lands that are conserved, by neglect. Because they just go into neglect because owners really don't see much value in that piece that now is protected by somebody else.
It's a really important point, and I remember attending an ASCC meeting, I think it was, it was either ASCC or Planning Commission meeting at which Jeremy Dennis, or perhaps it was Open Space before I joined it, at which Jeremy Dennis said it would be near impossible to create such a list. And so hearing that and having worked with Nancy on assembling some things that were core to the properties that we oversee as a committee, how hard it was to get that conservation easement. I understand some of the complexities of the request, but Carter, could we work together? Because
Yeah.
Nona's been shaking her head.
Here's my point, is that at some point, through time, that there are these conservation easements that have been recorded. And if they just go into neglect, they become, fire risks, they become, derelict. And to me, it really makes sense, that if the town required or took or was gifted, conservation easements, then you ought to be taken care of, observing what's being done or not being done, on those lands, or you should give it back, so that the property owner can actually, be motivated to take care of his land.
It's a very valuable point, and Nana, please weigh in.
Yeah, so this has come up several times because some of those are wildlife corridors or would potentially be. And all I know is that I've found a few just by looking at assessor parcel maps where it's actually labeled as a conservation easement sometimes. I don't.
On the map that
On the map, yeah, I have a neighbor.
Well,
Whose
when
conservation
there's a
easement.
carve out, when there's a carve out on the inside of a parcel, that it will typically, plot, what is being preserved. The parcels that are much more difficult, to locate and frankly to deal with, are the ones where the entire parcel,
Hmm.
is in a
Mhm,
conservation,
mhm, mhm.
because then it won't show up on the map.
Right, right.
And
Well, this is where institutional memory is the first place to start. And there's probably some low hanging fruit that we can get a list started. Well, I'm hoping. And once we have something to work with and have some enthusiasm and momentum, perhaps we will have enough staff to support some of this hunt and pet. Otherwise, we could always start looking through every parcel in town.
well. Okay. Anyway,
But thank you for,
sorry
thank you
sorry
for
for
raising the
interrupting.
issue. Thank you for raising the issue. It's an important one.
I think that's an important priority at some point. It never seems to rise to the very top of the priority list, but that is one. I'd like to also say that a priority this year should be finding out how we can support the council by researching Fogarty more. And, the town is so short-staffed that anything we can do to move that forward quickly will be helpful because otherwise someone else will buy it.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
and we won't have as many opportunities, so.
Great. Then I think I will fold my last comment and the last agenda item together. Let me hand out these maps. I didn't have time to pull together a complete report, and we would be here far too long if I were to pull together a complete report and wrap up the last two Hawthorne's Board of Directors meetings that link together as they have been considering the use for the 13 acres of the historic district, and then as well what the POG considered the Hawthorne's area map. But thumbnail, things have not changed. The presentation that will go before the town council following the town council study session looks identical to the POG, to what the POG considered, with the exception of some requests that the Portola Valley Ranch community made to the board of directors, to staff. So I want to talk about the success of Portola Valley Ranch community and some hypotheses that I have about why our Portola Valley community is not being well represented at this moment in time, and that this is one of the biggest land use issues that this community is going to face for sure, unlike some of the looming housing decisions that are out there that may or may not come to pass. This is going to come to pass and is well deserving of the full community's attention and participation. The map that you have before you is really just to, let me see if I, this is the map that I am sharing to those of you, that I'm sharing for those of you at home. What you're looking at is a map that shows the various districts of the board members that are elected to represent the Mid-Penn Regional Open Space. So there are a total of 7 different districts. It goes as high, as north. It's as far north as Pacifica, I think that looks like, above Montera, and as far south as is Monte Sereno, Los Gatos, and somewhat south of that. And all the way to the bay, from the ocean to the bay, in other words. So including East Palo Alto. Of these 7 districts, our representative, our district is District 6. Our representative is Margaret Niven. The POG was represented by 13 members, only 2 of whom were Portola Valley residents. And this to me was the kicker. One of the 2 residents who became the chair of the committee was appointed by Margaret Niven to represent not Portola Valley, but all of the District 6. So we essentially had one representative of Portola Valley, that being Karen Batra, amongst 13 people. So in terms of representation, we got a very, very full regional approach, and our ability to weigh in as a committee was limited, as you know, to the ad hoc, that Jeremy Dennis, before he left the town, appointed an ad hoc committee, which was made up of a number of committee representatives. I represented Open Space Committee and worked together with the collective of a group. About 4 of us showed up to regular meetings that we connected with together. There's a lot of demands on committee chair times. We're all working as hard as we can and weighed in as often as we did, sometimes individually as committees. And the Open Space Committee sent 2 letters to the town, one dealing with the Alpine Trail and another one more broadly about our issues. What a lot of that just simply was not captured by the staff in their presentation to their board. It was, I was quite flummoxed to see that for the amount of work that this ad hoc committee put together, that it was not well represented to the to the board of the Mid-Penn board. So that remains to be remedied at the next board meeting. The problem with their next board meeting is overlaps with the March 12th board meeting, our March 12th town council meeting, at which we are going to, as I kind of understand it, and to be confirmed, at which we are going to entertain the acquisition of Fogarty. So it's tough to be in 2 places at once. I haven't quite figured it out yet. I've tried, and It's kind of like having a quarter of you in two places rather than all of you anywhere. But back to, because I want to talk about how Portola Valley Ranch was able um, to be more convincing. And they hired a lawyer, and the lawyer was effective in writing clear letters of concern and request, specific requests and concerns to the board. And because Portola Valley Ranch has a board itself, a couple of board members and a slew of the ranch communities showed up at every meeting and spoke at every meeting with a consistent message and voice. And that was necessary, and it got through. So I just think that there is a way, and we're going to need to amass that kind of energy and focus as a council, because there is, I think from a standpoint, a strategic standpoint, Mid-Penn has a lot of very competent staff. They are dedicated full-time to this issue, and they're coming at us. So I will just say I will look forward to our making a concerted effort here to represent our needs. I think I should leave it at that, and I can pursue this with anyone that's interested and listening. And if there are any hands raised, I'm happy to
I'm curious
committee
what,
questions. Yeah.
what PV Ranch wanted and got.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Nona. Yeah. The ranch had a couple of concerns, and primarily as the Mid-Penn was looking at, proposed a loop where you would park and then you would walk a full loop around. And after the committee, the POG members, this is the Public Access Working Group, looked at that loop, they said that's a 1.1 mile loop. We'd rather go further. Can you give us some more interesting terrain to explore? And they proposed a couple of spurs that whose point intersected the fence line at the ranch. And the POG members were very interested, as our community has been historically, in trail connectivity. The issue with bringing trail connectivity onto Sweet Springs Trail, which is now used predominantly, it's not a well-used trail. When I hike it, I marvel at its glory and lesser population of hikers. But to bring in the people that we will bring in regionally, Mid-Penn is a great draw, and it's a wonderful out to get people out. But Sweet Springs is maintained by, and this is where the legal issue came in, should be maintained by the town by legal contract that was struck up. It should be maintained as a 10-foot trail and be equestrian accessible. It is primarily or exclusively, depending upon how you read their original easements, an equestrian trail. So the town has not been, and therefore the ranch was saying, we can barely handle the maintenance as it is, and you bring on, a 10, 15 times the population wear and tear on this trail, and we will not be able to afford to maintain this. So that fence line stays. And what they were able to negotiate with Mid-Penn was rather than these pair of trails, which were known as 16, 17, meeting at the fence line, it's now an extra loop, and it just bypasses the fence line by some number of yards that made everyone comfortable. They also rerouted Trail 17, which was going to make hikers in full and complete view of the houses that are along that ridge. So it gave more privacy to the homeowners who don't have backyards, who don't have fences. It gave them the greater security of a little more privacy there. And so those were the concessions. They were very well received. There was an acknowledgement of the fence line. That was the full of it. or the all of it, as I recall, but I hope that answers your question. So, any other questions, comments? Well, then, good. We will,
We need a motion to establish these, these as our work priorities, for 2025.
that's a good question. Is anyone more, Judith, does this require a motion for us to establish priorities for the 2025 year? Or is it discussion and? Recorded as a decision, but take a vote on it, you mean? I mean, I wasn't thinking that we needed to take a vote on it, but that, I'm entertaining that. comment.
That's why I'm asking the question.
Yeah.
I don't think we
We'll
do.
record it as noted in the minutes. Okay, all right, all right. I understand, I understand, excuse me, Judith, you're saying that, why not? Why not? Okay, good. Carter, thank you for raising the issue.
Then I would move, that we adopt, the priorities established, in the, report to the town council, as our priorities, for the year of 2025.
Thank you, Carter. Any discussion or a second?
I'd second that.
But I want to add, doing research for the town on Fogarty.
Yeah, right. That's
Which I
right.
don't
There
think
was
is
the
in there.
addition. Thank you.
I amend that motion, to include that.
And I would second that.
Thank you both. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Hearing none. Gary, did I hear an aye out there? Thanks.
I hear.
Right. Thank you, Gary. All right, then. I think that brings us, in fact, I know that brings us to the conclusion of this meeting. I just wanted to draw to your attention the next 3 meeting, but we'll likely have 2, not 3 meetings in a row. But as I look forward, this is first Thursday of March, so we'll be in April before you know it. And I believe that, let's see here, I just sent them. So let me give you the dates. Thursday, April 3rd, May 1st, and June 5th. If you would kindly save all 3, my sense is since the first Thursday of July, we typically cancel because of the 4th, that we will be meeting 2 out of those 3 months. And I don't know which yet. It will largely depend on how things roll in the next couple weeks. What do you mean? Yes, I will. Thursday, April 3rd, Thursday, May 1st, and Thursday, June 5th, all at 5:30.
Through the chair, I will not be available for the April 3rd meeting.
Thanks for letting me know, Carter. And letting all of us know. Let me take that into, but you are available for the other 2. You play hard to get. I know where you work. Okay, fair enough then. Entertaining a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Thank you.
I'll second that. All in favor? Thanks. Unanimously approved. Over and out. Thank you for joining us, people from home. Especially Bev and Gary.
I've been listening.